I'm Philip Ward, Editor-in-Chief of Aunt Minnie Europe. A lot of research programs, a lot of research projects will be presented this week at ECR. I'm very pleased to have with me a researcher in cancer imaging, Professor Goh. Thank you very much for joining us, Vicky.
Thank you for inviting.
Could you speak a little bit about your research? How did you first get involved as a researcher?
It's amazing to think that actually I got involved in research in my first year as a trainee. And it was a project that had nothing to do with cancer, but was to do with pelvic floor imaging. It's one of my probably highest cited papers since, and one of the highlights of it was actually being able to recruit one of the Team Great Britain's Olympic rowers into the project.
Excellent.
So I got to meet some celebrities.
Oh, good. How long ago was this? When can you remember when it was?
That would be telling how old I am. So I think we should pass on quickly.
Okay. Now, it obviously inspired you. It gave you a taste for the subject. What are the lessons that you've learned, do you think, about research over the years?
I think the most important thing I've learned actually is to take rejection very well. You have to have dogged persistence, and you really do have to be absolutely enthused about what you want to do, because it's really hard work.
Okay.
But well worth it.
I mean, we've all had them, those rejection letters. They're setbacks. Is it just a state of mind that gets you through, that gets you over those rejections?
I think it is a state of mind, but also that you have to learn to take criticisms well and to really use those criticisms to improve the next application, for example, or the next paper. So everything is positive.
Okay,
So
good.
yes.
Now, collaboration is very important with other disciplines as a radiologist. How do you manage that process? How do you collaborate with other disciplines in your research?
Collaboration in radiology is everything, as you know. And it really is important to be able to listen, to be able to absorb, to be able to discuss, and really to build a great team around you. And I think that's the most important thing for a successful project, is being able to communicate.
Okay, so collaborate with other disciplines. Are there any other lessons that you've learnt in how you conduct your research? Are there anything else that you'd like to pass on as a practical hint and suggestion?
Certainly. I think the most important thing is be prepared. And that's probably the highest chance of success in a grant application, being absolutely detailed in your plan and also in your outputs. Your papers, for example. If people can replicate your research, you've written a good paper.
Okay. Now, in terms of funding, it's suggested that funding is increasingly hard to get. Are you finding this yourself?
I think if you speak to everybody, that's no doubt the funding environment has changed. And certainly as a radiologist trying to drive primary research, funding applications are becoming increasingly challenging. There are probably a few lessons to be learned from how we've done things previously. So collaboration networks, that's one thing. Being able to take charge of radiology within, so in other words, not letting others do your work is another very important thing to remember as well. Mm-hmm. And thirdly, make sure that you are going for the right funding stream. So those are your highest chance of success, really, in funding applications.
Okay. Now, you mentioned when we spoke earlier that you divide your time 50-50 between clinical work and between academic research. How do you manage that process yourself?
I'm having a little chuckle to myself as you say 50% is academic research, because obviously 50% is university time, and that's teaching as well as everything. So unfortunately, as with most researchers, I think in medicine, you end up doing things at the weekend and you do things in the evenings as well. How do I manage it? I think with a good sense of humour. That's how you manage it.
Yeah.
It's got to be something you want to do. And I think for me, research has been, as you say, the lifeblood, really, of pushing radiology forward. Without research, we are just a diagnostic service, after all, and it's so important that we get more people onto this research bandwagon.
And getting that message across to the public, I suppose,
Absolutely.
to the patients, to the general public who you see every day. Now, the other thing about research is individuals inspire you. Who were the people who inspired you in your research programs?
Well, I have to say I've been very, very lucky to have as my mentors the two people, really, who set me up in research in my first research project, and that's Professor Clive Bartram and Professor Steve Halligan. I think without them and their fantastic mentorship, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Okay. And working overseas, I think you've been involved in Canada yourself. You've had a stretch over there. Is working overseas important as a researcher?
Absolutely. I think you need we were talking about ideas and generation of ideas earlier, and I think you really do need to move outside of your comfort zone and area of interest, really to be able to take new ideas, new experiences forward, and to bring that back into your environment. And I say to all our trainees, you really must go abroad.
Excellent. Now, many of our readers, many of our listeners out there won't have conducted research themselves, but they might want to do so. How can they get something off the ground, do you think? What advice would you have for those people who might want to get into research?
Well, we are at the ECR, and I will have to plug one of the ESR and School of Radiology ideas, which is go for some of these 3-month stints as a first initiative, see if you like it. Mm-hmm. If you really can't travel abroad, find somebody in your institution who you really think can inspire you to do the project, and most of all, want to do it, I think, really.
Okay. Vicky, thank you very much for sparing the time and joining us. I hope you have a successful Congress.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom.
It's been a pleasure.
This is Philip Ward, Aunt Minnie Europe, signing off.